Food companies spend millions, if not billions of dollars specifically to engineer food that is the most addictive. Why? They want you to buy it. They want you to spend your money on their product so you buy more.
I am so honored and thrilled to introduce you to Amanda CarnivorousMe, this incredible transformation journey that we are watching unfold in real time. Welcome to my channel. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's just get started and kind of let our listeners know where you've been, who you are, what your background is. I really actually just want to dive into your story, and you have a lot of experience so far. And so I want to glean what we possibly can. I know you have an incredible YouTube channel, and so people can follow you and watch that journey and learn the life lessons that you're learning on this journey. But yeah, tell us about you.
I was just an average kid, not overweight. It wasn't till I went through some childhood traumas when I was around 8 or 9 that then I started gaining weight. My parents had no idea why I was gaining weight. I just kind of I'd learned to deal with my emotions by eating. My mom was like a size 4, and I remember watching her when she'd get upset, eat an entire bag of chocolate, not gain weight. Like I just watched her. I don't think she ever had any idea that her, child watching her deal with her emotions, that was how it was going to affect me. But it did. So from a very young age, I learned food equals emotional stability. And so I just kind of slowly gained weight up until I was about 16. And then once I hit 16, man, that's when around that time there's the yo-yo dieting. I have done I've done so many diets from, veganism, the Whole30, paleo to low fat, high carb to my favorite one, not really, was
Because you hated
um
your food.
oh my gosh, it just was terrible. It was terrible. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it went. I just struggled all through my teens, all through my 20s. When we moved from to Washington State, I just kind of decided it's kind of burnt out. I love like neuro-based patients, but it just has kind of turned into, I ended up in home health. It just it became too much. Just, with the weight and people's judgment and things like that. It just honestly
Oh, they
burned.
didn't want to get physical therapy advice from someone that was in the shape that you were in.
Yeah. They just pretty much, just because I was not fit, pretty much
Right.
I had no advice to give them. And so, I mean, it is what it is. And it just burned me out, honestly. It really did. The healthcare system. Plus, honestly, there's just a lot in the past 5 years, a lot of change having to document, then treat the patient. And I hated that. Anyways, so we moved away from that. My husband and I own our own small business in healthcare, actually. We started it when I was seeing patients, and then we kind of transitioned to hiring other staff. But anyways, the precipice of my story, I last year, I had gotten to 360 pounds, and it wasn't overnight. My early 20s, I was like 210, 230. I'd hover between there, and I would bike, 6 or 7 miles when I was going to college. I would bike because I went to college in Minneapolis. I'd bike to and from college, and even 220 pounds, I would bike, 10 to 12 miles every single day. And then I just got more depressed because I've been on antidepressants since I was 12, or on and off, I should say. So anyways, last year came, slowly gained weight, got 360 pounds, 32 years old, having to use a walker because I was a type 2 diabetic. I injured my back years and years ago moving a patient. So I have some low back problems plus all the excess weight. I literally could hardly walk a few hundred feet
How
without
tall?
being in excruciating pain.
What's your height, Amanda?
I'm 5'5.5". So I think my starting BMI was 59.1 or 59.3,
Sure.
which is very high. I mean, that's almost pretty much 60% of me was fat. So then last year, I just started having a lot of pain in my abdomen, and my poor husband, and I was like, oh, we're gonna have to go to the emergency room. And he drove me all the way there. And then I'm like, oh no, the pain's fine. So I made him bring me home. ended up calling 911, and they kind of just like rolled their eyes at me and they were like, oh, just, they said it without saying it. You're fat. You're fine.
The emergency room told you this is what's wrong.
No, we called, I had him call an ambulance because I just thought I was just absolutely going to pass out. And then they got there and the pain had subsided at that point, some. And they just kind of just wrote me off. They're like, oh, you're type 2 diabetic, you're this, you're that. And then, I was like, you know what, forget you guys. Hour at the house. And I just told my husband, I'm like, that's it. I just started crying. The pain was so bad. So he took me back to the emergency room. And at that point, I could hardly walk. He had to take me in. And it turns out I had a kidney stone. I've never had one in my entire life, but I actually thought I was dying. My mom told me about having kidney stones, and I'm just like, oh, in my mind, I'm like, they can't be that bad. No, I actually thought I was dying before I even knew what it was. The pain was excruciating. And the emergency doctor said that kidney stones can actually be worse than childbirth.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And that was kind of the change. I remember just laying there, literally just sobbing. Like, I mean, I was just absolutely wailing. The people next to me probably were like, holy crap, this lady's dying, because the pain was so bad. And I remember just looking over at my husband and realizing, God, how did I get here? Like, how did his life become about taking care of me? And because my husband, he's 5'10", 5'11", he's slender, he had a little bit of weight on him, 20 pounds, and he's slender and he's been his entire life. And like, how did I get here? And it just kind of hit me. It's like, I got here by the choices I made.
Okay.
And that's when it really hit me. I remember just looking at him thinking, God, Amanda, every choice you've ever made is what landed you here. It's not some mystical force that got you here, like that I was a victim that got me here. It was the choices I'd made in life. And my brother had been talking about carnivore. He'd been doing it for like a year and a half, and he's not overweight. I think he lost like 25 pounds, something like that. And he pointed me to Michaela Peterson. So then we got out of the emergency room and I came home, and it's like, okay, that's it. At this point, it's do or die. Either I do something about this or I am going to die sooner than later. I was so depressed. My husband had to listen to me every single night, just pretty much say, I wish I didn't wake up in the morning. I mean, I look back and I genuinely, he was amazing for sticking with me and staying with me and supporting me where I was at. And I have to say, I'm extremely blessed to have had him, or have him, I should say, in my life, and started carnivore the next day.
Oh my goodness, radical. And talk about a rock bottom. I think
Oh,
so
yes.
many people can identify with, I was overweight. I had gotten up to 300 pounds and I was a size, 26. I was getting to 3X, was kind of living in the tent dresses were the only dresses that would fit. And was getting so hard to get around and was getting out of breath and low energy, 4 kiddos, and so chasing the homeschooling, and I identify with so many parts of your story. Was very depressed, and I thank you, and I am a survivor also. Thank you for just being so upfront and honest about those stories, because sometimes those stories are like, was that me? Because as we get into living kind of a healed state and things really improving, like, I don't want to associate with that time anymore. I don't even want to remember that time anymore. And so I had an interview with Sean Baker about a year ago or so, where it was really interesting. My abuser had actually just passed away. And so I just came up because it was like up front on my mind. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll talk about it. I'm pretty healed, feeling pretty good. And so you can have that bravery to go back and look at those really difficult, dark, desperate times. But I think that the more that we share our story, that, because our audience, that they're there. There's so many people that are watching your YouTube right now that are going to listen to this podcast, hear what's happening, that are feeling absolutely desperate and don't know what the next step is. And I mean, for you and I, we got into this morbid obesity zone that was also very awakening and came with a bunch of other issues. And for some people, it's maybe they are just have the 20 pounds to lose or something, but they're out of control with their relationship with food, with their thoughts about their body, and their health is still in a dangerous spot. So I just appreciate just your vulnerability in sharing that story. You mentioned that there was an autoimmune component. I mean, I want to hear dates. Like, what date was their start date? How far in are we right now? Where are we at right now?
I started June 28th, 2022, and I think today's two, no, wait, yeah, 200, no, good Lord, 325 days are right about there. So I'm just past 10 months. Yeah, it's like 10 months in a week or something close to that right now.
Goodness. Okay, so you're newbie. So
Mhm.
yeah, I've been in this, I've been doing this about 2.5 years. So I consider myself a newbie too, because Michaela is in about 5.5 years. And
Mhm.
that's my colleague that I teach with, Raymond Nazon, he's at that 5 year point. And so it's kind of cool, like some of the people that really found out about this early, started coaching early, started doing this early, have been in for quite some time. And like, we're kind of new to this, but you're new. Tell me about the last 10 months.
Oh, it's been life, right? There's ups, there's downs, there's, you know, something, I mean, some of the biggest lessons I learned is reaching for perfection is pointless. There is no perfect human on this planet. And I have always with diets, it was like do or die. Like you either do 100% or you're a failure. And it's coming to realize it's like carnivore is a lifestyle. I sometimes say carnivore diet, but the word diet's kind of been taken over about like I'm going to do something for a short period of time and then stop it. No, when I say carnivore diet, it's just like that is my lifestyle. Looking at it from the fact that it is a lifestyle, whether that doesn't mean I'm never going to have like another raspberry in my life. It just means a 95% of my life is going to be based in carnivore. And that's some big things is getting over it. Well, one, accepting the responsibility. I got where I got by my own choices. It was it's self-empowering because if I made these choices that got me here, then I have the ability to make choices that can get me out of here. Being the victim, because that's what I was for the longest time, right? Like all these terrible things happened when I was a kid. And, then you're an adult and you're overweight and society judges you and all this and just all that negativity. I let go being a victim and realized, okay, I can make different choices. I can choose not to be a victim. And that, man, I felt like I lost 500 pounds. And then I also felt empowered from those moments because it just, once we stop being that victim, then we have power because
Mm.
victims don't have power. They're powerless. And then another really big thing that I learned in the beginning was letting go, grace, forgiveness. I've stumbled handfuls of times on this, and I will in the future. I'm not perfect. Accepting, understanding, and moving on. Oh man, that's the key. Because as I said, I was like all or nothing. And every diet I ever failed on, I would be like, "Oh, Amanda, you're terrible. You're a failure. You suck." Whatever the language was. And now it's like, okay, Amanda, you stumbled. You ate something off carnivore. What happened that led to that? Okay, what can we put in place to prevent that in the future? Move on.
Wow. So you've gotten so much into a problem solving mode.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
oh my goodness. I love what you said about the victim mentality. And I think that, in our culture, in a cause to reach out and help healing and help people understand it is not your fault. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. And so once you come to an awareness and you start connecting the dots and you start connecting action, then you can, stop shaming yourself. Because I mean, to me, I look at it and I say, well, whose fault is it? There's the blame game is an endless, pointless game. And yet it helps to understand. I love what you said about the modeling, but the parenting. And so those of us that have our little babies, like more is caught than taught. And so when you see this certain thing modeled in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
then that is kind of laying out blueprints, right? And so there's blueprints laid out for you. So I think about, for me, it was the types of foods and the food industry as well. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you have kind of, has meant something to you, just to see the design behind that?
Yeah. I think, especially the obesity epidemic, I don't think it's just one answer. Like, it's not just one thing.
Yep.
What I will say is food companies spend millions, if not billions of dollars specifically to engineer food that is the most addictive. Why? They want you to buy it. They want you to spend your money on their product so you buy more. And how are they going to do that? Well, food. made by making it taste the best it can, by giving it the best, like just like oral sensations of, you get the smooth and creamy with the crunch, or, whatever it is, whatever the combination of food is. They spend so much money to make us want their food. So no wonder people want their food. And so I do think it's a big impact on the quality of food, the accessibility of food, and just the thing usually always goes is the money is the root of all evil, and it's actually the love of money is the root of all evil.
Absolutely.
And that's what it boils down to, is the love of money. People in these companies are willing to say, you know what, it's your responsibility not to eat too much and get fat. And it's like, well, where does your responsibility start and stop as a company that you are specifically engineering, like chemically engineering stuff to be addictive? So the food is a big thing. I mean, it's a huge, huge thing. And then also, I mean, it goes to the government level of subsidizing. This food's the most unhealthy, the least nutritious foods are subsidized by the government. So we literally pay taxes to pay companies to sell food cheaply to malnourish us. I mean, it's mind boggling. And I mean, then it comes down to the level of personal responsibility. It does. I always tell people, it's like, I am a binge eater and I acknowledge that I am. I have responsibility that I don't put myself in positions that make me binge eat. And it's like all of these things together. We are responsible for what we put in our mouth. Nobody forced me to put that spoonful of cake and then more cake and more cake in my mouth. I made that choice. I am responsible for that choice. But the responsibility also falls on these companies of like, let's make healthy things, not addictive things. I mean, honestly, it's a complex it's situation, because if people stop buying their products, they would stop doing it, right? So it just
No, I agree completely. It takes two to tango, right? And so, yeah, we're both jumping in, but I feel that once I realized, oh, I love how you stated this. I love how you stated the powers, the money trails, the government, the subsidize. This is so important. Once we have this awareness that we can see that the deck is stacked against us. And so if you're walking through it without awareness, you have these, experiences, these modelings, you have these things that make sense, then I think that it makes sense what we're seeing, what's happening in the culture. And the culture, when I look around, is getting sicker and sicker. And it's, evidence on some of us because we were easy gainers or bingers or food addicts, sugar addicts, whatever it was. And so, you can visibly see it on us, and then we become marginalized. Then we get those other social issue, judgments that come against us. You mentioned binge eating disorder or having a binge background, and I heard you talk about environment. And so how have you changed your environment in that way? How important is that? And are there other issues that you feel like have helped you heal from the binge eating?
I think our environment is vital. Like setting up our environment, if we are a binge eater, or whatever the eating issue is, the disordered eating, setting up your environment so it's not triggering. So I am a carb and sugar binger. I learned to eat emotions to make me feel better. I am upset, go eat some, sugar, whatever it is. So what we did is we cleaned our house out. And I told my husband, okay, if you need something, I said, okay, fine. I was like, do not eat it in front of me and do not tell me about it. Like,
Oh, good.
I went as far as told him, I'm like, if you eat it, you put it at the bottom of the trash can so I don't even see it, because out of sight, out of mind. Although I have to say he's been extremely good about not going and doing those kinds of things, because he realized it was just harming himself too. He may not be, he wasn't overweight, but for his health, he needed to do like 100% too. So I've been very blessed that he hasn't done that. So that I actually think just setting up our environment, things like the room I'm sitting in right now, it's our spare bedroom that we kind of changed into, it's a reading room. I love reading, and it's actually one of the things that's really helped me with the emotional and binge eating aspect. It's been vital for me.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I want to hear about that. If there's any books, especially that are your favorites that have really helped with that, because that's what we hear so much. And, for us, when we're leading community groups, it's the community is so important, seeing the mirror neurons, hearing the stories, but this is beautiful community. I am so excited to get to share this with people because you have such a passion. What are some of those books that have helped you with the binge eating disorder stuff?
Funny enough, I'm actually rereading it. This can be controversial with people, but I always tell people just like set aside, read the book, let it go. Who wrote it is Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. It it was honestly, I say it was the slap in the face that I needed. I read I read half of it like a couple years ago, but every time I read it, I get something new out of it because I'm in a different part of my life.
Yes.
It really taught me holding, like, the first chapter is stand up tall with your head back or head up, excuse me. It really taught me posture, how we
Mhm.
think about ourselves, how we see ourselves in the hierarchy of life. It's an impact. It impacts us not just mentally, but physically. It also helped me realize that I've always associated like good and bad, right? Like when I was younger, I used to like the shame and the guilt around the eating and things. It's like I'm such a bad person. It's like, okay, I am responsible. I don't want to say at fault because fault is more usually seen as like a negative connotation, but I am responsible. I made these choices. Being 360 pounds, it doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me less valuable. It's just my choices got me there, period. It has no meaning, good or bad. It just is. And that book really helped me understand it. It helped me understand that my past trauma that I was looking at was I kept looking at it through an 8-year-old's eyes. Like, I'm 33 now. I'm older. I understand things more complicated than an 8-year-old. So I was able to go back and look at the traumas that had happened and said, yes, they were terrible. Yes, they happened, but I have more nuance and understanding how it happened, why, these kinds of things. And how do I say this? It makes like I don't have any shame or guilt about what happened to me. It just did, and yeah, it wasn't great, but it made me who I am today, and I actually love who I am today. So would I go back and change it? Sadly, probably, or not say sadly, but honestly, probably not, because would I be who I am today without all the events that have happened, the bad events in my life and good? I wouldn't be who I am today with what I'd already experienced. And that
Mm.
book just kind of helped me get through all of that.
It's a tapestry and the things that go into the tapestry are so complex. And
Yes.
is sensitivity and tenderness. Oh gosh, now you're gonna make me cry. That when you have been through something like that, that you can share with other people. I love what you said about it just is. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people think about, being emotional eaters. We've touched on that a lot, obviously. And a lot of the practices or the teachings or the things that have helped me is to viewing emotions, or in this case, you're even saying experiences, as not good or bad, as just present. Has that in like say the last 10 months, I mean, has there been like emotional growth? Has that changed for you, do you think?
Oh, like spinach. Before I started this, I was depressed and anxious, and the smallest thing, like the smallest thing would upset me and send me in just like this terrible tailspin. And being able to step back and realize my anxiety specifically, it is about living in the past or the future, not in the present.
Oh my
We're either
gosh.
anxious about something that happened or something that may happen, but we're not present to what's happening now. That
Mhm.
helped a lot. Just getting present with life is now, things it happened or it's going to happen or whatever. I have no control over that specific whatever it is. I only have control over my decisions in life. Like that is, I can't control anything. I can't control my husband, my dogs, whatever. I can only control how I respond to the situations that arise. That resolved the anxiety. As far as the emotional part, absolutely. Like, one, YouTube is really hard. It is like you got to grow up real fast. People are just,
Yeah, a lot of critique and a lot of
oh,
people.
yes,
Oh,
just so much not unsolicited advice in the sense of I think my biggest, I shouldn't say it's a complaint, but the biggest thing I noticed is people are like, well, I did XYZ, so this should work for you. And it's like, but you aren't me. You have not
good.
experienced a second in my shoe. And I always tell people they want to be like, how much should I eat? What should I do? I'm like, listen, you're you. I can only share my experience. You take and experiment and figure out what works for you, because I do fine with spices. You might not. Like, I do fine with dairy. I don't overeat dairy at all. Like, I like cheese, but I could take or leave it. Some people, like, they just go ham and crazy and eat all the cheese up. Finding specific triggers and things like that. All this has been emotional growth, personal, mental growth. And I genuinely feel like the body for like the obese people, our body reflects our mental state. It reflects what we think about ourselves, and just it's like we're wearing our scars on the outside when you're overweight. Like, that's literally what you're doing, is you're wearing your scars, your shame, your a big thing for me was I was wearing my unprocessed emotions on me. I didn't want to deal with my emotions, go eat, numb them. And that, I mean, having to now, like, you have to be present and deal with them to prevent that cycle from happening. I mean, it's so much growth. It really is.
Has it helped in your marriage? Like, how has your relationship changed during this time?
It's it absolutely has. Scott and I mean, we've always had a good marriage, but it was probably more than he will ever tell me. It had to have been an enormous amount of stress. I just got to the point where I wasn't doing dishes. I wouldn't leave the house because, I mean, we can run our business remotely, and I'd stop seeing patients before we even moved. Because I was in a car accident where someone T-boned me, and it kind of gave me like PTSD. So I just like wouldn't leave the house. He had to do everything, grocery shopping, laundry, cleaning, all of this. I was just like an empty shell he had to deal with, and I probably was like an emotional vampire. I'll be honest, I probably wasn't just an emotional vampire on him. And that's not the case anymore. It's gone back to we are a partnership. When he stumbles, I'm there to be his rock. And when I'm stumble, he's there to be my rock. And it's that shared part. Our communication with each other has gotten immensely better. He's never been a binge eater or anything like that. He's never really had any food problems. But he said that, because when he met me, I was like 200 pounds,
Right.
190, something like that. And he was fine with that. But he did tell me, we had this really deep conversation one time. He's like, he never truly understood when he would look at obese people. He's like, he had that ingrained in his head, just lazy people. They're just lazy. Like, I mean, honestly, that's what most people see when they see someone morbidly obese. Like, oh, they're just lazy. They're choosing to be that way. And him and I had a really deep conversation. He said over the years, he's just slowly learned that it isn't just you're lazy. He's like, there is something going on inside, and the outside's reflecting the inside. And I think that was a big, like, growth thing for him, is understanding that around weight, or no matter what it is, emotional instability and stuff like that, things have happened. And it has absolutely improved our marriage tenfold. I mean, I can't even probably articulate very clearly that it has, but it has.
No, I hear you. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry throughout this whole interview. And
He's
I
just,
identify with a lot of that. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
he has been so supportive,
Mhm.
and I just feel so blessed.
Yeah, and you're coming to it as a partner, as a vivid,
Yes.
alive partner that has a future that you're thinking about. Your future thoughts used to be, I don't want to get out of bed, and now you're in a totally different spot. You
Oh
identify
yeah.
the whole way that you think about who Amanda is has like transformed. This is
Yeah.
just, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think a really big thing too is, I mean, this is not like one size fits all, but a lot of times I've seen, just from people I've known and things like that, people will grow apart, right? The husband and wife. And I
Totally.
kind of discovered a big reason, not the only, but a big reason behind that is one will try to grow in whatever aspect that is, like whether emotionally, you know, just spiritually, something like that. And the other one's either stagnant or they're resentful. So as one tries to climb the ladder of success in the sense of being more emotionally stable, or, whatever that looks like for them, they try to grow as an individual. This person's here, and that gap gets bigger. And a successful marriage is when both of you don't have to go at the same speed, but you both are growing in whatever way that you guys deem necessary. You're going together as a partnership, not resentful, whatever, see you later, I'm going to go do this by myself. Not that we have to do every single thing with each other, but just that growing as a couple to grow together versus apart.
I love it because there can be a competition that happens, and you're right, a split that happens. And so I think if you have that common village, but really your husband laid the foundation because he was your rock. He was the person that, you know, kept everything moving, and you are so appreciative of that. And so now that you're stronger and you're feeling better, you're like, I can play this role too. We can trade. We can both play this role together. It's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's so cool. Okay. So I jotted down a couple of questions. Oh, you had mentioned people ask you, you know, how much should I eat or whatever. What does that look like for you? Did you dabble with, you know, protein, fat, or did you know, what's your journey been like? I know you're only in, but how's that going?
I started off eating 3 meals and some snacks. I really just started off eating to make sure I didn't get hungry. I just ate, you know, meat and fats. And then I did start at some point, like I fell into like, oh, I need to eat more butter, more butter, more butter, more butter, which was not for Amanda, come to find out. And then eventually I went down to 3 meals, no snacks, 2 meals. I did 1 meal a day. And right now I do 1 meal. I do mostly 2 meals a day. It has been discovering for myself what true hunger is. Like I used to think, and this is something I learned from Dr. Sivas, is I used to think when my stomach grumbled, that means I needed to eat. That's actually not true. All our stomach grumbling is liquids and gases going through. It is grumbling all the time, but when we eat, the sound is muffled so we can't actually hear it. When there's no food in our digestive tract, it's just loud enough that we can hear it. All it means is there's no food or trace amounts of food in our digestive tract. It doesn't mean we have to eat. It just means there's not something in there. So learning what true hunger is, learning that honestly, 99.9% of cravings is just a craving. It's I want to change psychological state. I'm feeling bad, so I want to eat something to make me feel better. That is kind of where I am at this point. I eat not until I'm full, because that's actually, I've eaten too much once I feel full, because it's the stretch receptors. It's a secondary eating system that tells us that we're full. I eat, and then it's like consulting myself. Do I need to eat more? Because I still got lots of Bank of Amanda to go through. And so do I need to eat more? Nah, I'm okay. And then I just kind of move on from there. And that's why I
Beautiful.
tell people, it's like, I can't tell you exactly. What I can tell you is focus on getting fat adapted. I fell into this like, oh, I'm going to do fasting. I'm a binge eater. Like, thank God it didn't send me into a binge, but boy, did it make me rely on willpower solely. And I have poor willpower. To this day, my willpower sucks. I thought about food all the time when I would fast. And I'm like, this is not healthy. This is not good. It is going to make me binge. I'm fine doing intermittent fasting. So I'll eat at like 10, 11, eat at 5 o'clock, and then I don't eat till the next day. No problem with that. Not eating even for 24 hours. It's like, oh my God, my arm's starting to look like a chicken drum. I'm so hungry, even though I'm not. It's just a psychological battle that's unnecessary. So that's what I tell people. Avoid fasting in the beginning. If you can do it, great. But I suggest if you're a binge eater, don't do it. Eat until you are not hungry, get fat adapted, and then start playing with things. Get there first.
Agreed. Oh my goodness. I love your plan. It's a very similar. I do teach some fasting and dabble in that sort of thing, but it's the way that we teach is exactly what you're talking about. And so we kind of have this period of time where we have 3 meals a day plus snacks. Then we go to 3 meals, then we go to 2 meals. I was like, this sounds so familiar. And honestly, that's the reason that we, you know, wrote up this program and we teach it, is because it's what Raymond saw over years and years of health coaching and carnivore coaching. He's what people saw that were successful did. And so we're doing exactly what you're doing. We're trying to break it down a little bit and say, it might look like this. It might not. What I didn't hear you speaking to is I didn't hear that you were counting calories every day or putting little things in a thing every day. That has so far that not been necessary for you.
A couple times I've journaled, like I'll do a week if I like the weight. I've had a couple weight stalls, and I know Dr. Barry says this very differently, like it's for months, but I still, as I tell people, it's like I started off at 360 pounds. I should pretty consistently be losing some weight every week. And I've had a couple times where like I've gone a week and I haven't. So I'll journal for a week. I will take in account like carbs, calories, just to see if things are sneaking in there, and really to see the volume of food. This is actually how I discovered I was eating more food doing OMAD, so 1 meal a day versus doing 2 MAD.
Absolutely.
And so I found, okay, I actually end up eating less, eating twice a day Then I did once a day. So that's when I went back to 2 meals a day, and then boom, solved my problem. Calories, there's always this argument about calories, but fundamentally the issue with calories is a calorie eaten is not a calorie burned. It's not a one-to-one equation. And calories, they are useful in knowing the energy density of a food. That's why I do find them helpful in that way, right? Like if you eat a piece of cake and it's 1,500 calories, well, it's very energy dense versus if you eat, like whatever, a hamburger and it's 500 calories. They also don't take into consideration, are you fat adapted? Are you using glucose? Are you using carbs for energy? Are you using fat for energy? So I do use them intermittently just to more assess volume of food than anything, but never your calorie counting. Too many data points to me stresses me the heck out.
Exactly. And so 10 months in, what's your update right now for how much weight and things like that? Where's that at?
I've lost 116 pounds so far. I started off wearing like size 28, 30. I mean, honestly, my size 28 jeans were like not fitting anymore. I could barely get them buttoned. I wear size 14, 16 now. I went from having to use the walker to like, I literally, and I mean literally, it's called a rollator walker. So it has brakes and a seat on it. I barely could make it a few houses without having to sit down because my back hurt. And now we walk 5 to 7 miles every single day with the dogs. I do paddle boarding. We do bicycle riding. Yeah, I walk my dogs every single day. My older one, well, 2 months ago, I call her my soul dog, died, and that was extremely, extremely difficult. I will say that's probably because she was the reason I got up every morning to go walk. She just kind of died abruptly. She was 12 and just kind of had an emergent situation and died, and made myself cry. Um, I did. That was the first time I'd actually had a binge, and it lasted about 11 days. And then we got back on, and I pulled myself back together. We've been walking ever since because I have 4 dogs. Well, I had 4. I have 3 now, and I just discovered the other 3 need me too. So my second older dog, she gets walked once to twice a day, a mile, and then the puppies, they get walked anywhere from 3 to 5 miles. Just depends on the day. We go to the gym 3 times a week. I play racquetball. I am no longer a type 2 diabetic. No, not a diabetic in remission. I am actually not a type 2 diabetic. My autoimmune, because I have scleroderma, fibromyalgia, and listen to me, I can't even remember my autoimmune stuff. That's so funny. RA. It had gotten to the point where just using my hands and feet, my joints hurt all the time. The only time I notice pain is when I overdo it. What else? I had fatty liver. My fatty liver is almost completely gone. Good God, I had 16 comorbidities. I actually have it on my website, like where I started and where I'm at. I was eaten up with yeast. It's called tinea versicolor, and it was just like everywhere on my skin. That was gone within a few months. I had severe GERD. That was gone within like the first 4 to 6 weeks. It was so bad that I couldn't lay flat on my back because I would have such bad indigestion that I would actually, if I laid flat on my back, I would aspirate the acid, and then it would go down my windpipe, and I'd sit up and my windpipe would actually close where I thought I was going to die because I'm like, dead asleep, wake up, and then I can't breathe because my body is trying to be protective and close my airway. That was gone within like 4 or 6 weeks. Golly, so much.
So much. Were you on medication?
I took oh gosh, I can't remember how many milligrams. I've been on antidepressants on and off my whole life. I'm at half a dose now. I will because sad seasonal affective disorder because I live in the Pacific Northwest. My husband just begged me not to quite quit yet till summer, and it's summer, so we're tapering off of that. I was taking metformin. I was not a insulin dependent diabetic at that point. I was taking metformin. I stopped taking that within a few weeks because my blood sugars were so good. My average glucose now is like 72, like from my A1C. Because I get my blood work tested every 3 months, whether I pay out of pocket or I have my doctor do it.
What was the A1C at?
Yeah, I mean, I take hydroxychloroquine for my autoimmune. I take half a dose now because it makes me allergic to the sun. It's just a side effect of the drug. And I'm hopefully in the next 6 months I can get off that. Other than that, like I wasn't taking a lot of drugs. Probably should have been. I was quite unhealthy, but Yeah.
That's
My,
how I was. I didn't want to go to the doctor when I was a bigger size like that. I was scared. I didn't want to be weighed and I didn't want to
yep.
know. So I was having all kinds of like weird symptoms and breathing things and things that I was like, this doesn't sound good. Like, I feel like I'm going to be one of those, you know, how they say that heart conditions are as every bit
Mhm.
of an issue in women as in men, number one killer. And I was like, I'm just going to like croak of a heart condition if I don't get something figured out. I
Yeah.
had actually looked at surgery, but thankfully, fasting was my entryway to it. It landed on carnivore. Eventually, it wasn't quite as popular when I started in 2017. And so it was, but it was how I held on to my results from everything. So I had lost 100 pounds with fasting and doing some keto and low carb, but I still didn't have the food freedom. And I love what you're saying, though. It's like, I love your message about you do not have to be perfect because
Mhm.
for some people, carnivore 100%, and they never look back. That kind of was my journey, but I had been through 100 pounds of dealing with food binging. I had been through such another world that I think that for me that, you know, that was how I went. I got involved in coaching right away. That motivates you, you know, to stick with it or whatnot. But I love what you're saying, that it's just like this doesn't have to be 100%. And when you were talking about the grief and that was the big thing that spiraled you back and that sent you back, I have just seen this again and again. It's a special kind of a pain. It's an experience that we don't thankfully have to deal with all that often. But when that one hits, it's like don't try to fast, you know, unless for some reason your body's asking for it. That's a whole nother situation. But I think that can be, you know, just so understandable and compassionate. And I appreciate that, you know, you were really transparent about that. And that's got to be difficult with the YouTube as well, because you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah. I've never like I've had, this I hope this doesn't sound terrible. My grandfather and grandmother have died. I was not close to them. And yes, it was grief and sad, but I never in my life had something I was so close to and loved so much. Like this dog, not everybody's a dog lover. I love dogs. She literally followed me everywhere. And the funny thing is she was my husband's dog. When we first started dating, she was his and I had mine. And she just slowly became my dog. She followed, like, I'd go take a shower and she'd sit next to the bathtub and like protect me because something was going to happen in the shower. I don't know. But she followed me everywhere and she loved me and I loved her so much. And I'd never experienced that kind of grief. And man, and yeah, it was definitely hard because, of course, this is something that I found is a lot of people, not everybody, because there's some amazing support people on my channel. A lot of people will look and be like, well, I did XYZ, or you should have done XYZ. And it's just like, have some compassion, like really, like not only for others, but for yourself. And that's why I always like try to stress people, don't expect perfection. There's not a perfect human on this planet. And if someone tells you they're perfect, they are lying through their teeth because we are not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And if someone tells you they have the answer, I was like, nah, it's not the answer because we're all individual. Each of our bodies is different, how we deal with things. And I told one of my, because we do book clubs, I told her, I was like, I've never used drugs in my life, but I was like, at that point in that grief, if I had had it, I probably would have just anything. I would have done anything to try to help relieve the grief that I was feeling. And so, yeah, I mean, we deal with things differently. And man, grief is difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the message of grace. Like we're just always saying that, but it's like an extra kind of special kind of, you know, understanding in that moment. And yeah, it's a lifestyle. This whole thing is a lifestyle. Was it hard for you to get back on track, or how was it after that kind of
Mm,
fell apart?
No, because I mean, my husband, he always tells me grace is unearned forgiveness. Like that is what true grace is,
Um,
unearned forgiveness. And he he was my rock through all of it because he dealt with it a lot better. He has more of a just spiritual background and he just kind of helped me understand that yes, I am going to see, I don't, whatever someone else believes, this is what I believe. I'm going to see her again. She is pain-free, waiting for me,
mm,
and that I will get to see her again. And that's what helped me. And it's like, she was such a big motivator to walk and eat well and to be able to take her, because I mean, she was 12, turning 13, and she has bilateral hip dysplasia. And for years, they just weren't getting walked because Scott was having to do so much in her life. And it's like, she
Yeah.
started walking when I started walking. So she was able to get stronger to the point where 2 days before she died, she walked 6 miles with me
Oh,
up a mountain and down at 12 and a half years old. I was so freaking proud of her. And so she was like my partner in this. Because my husband, he can walk for 50 miles and not be tired. But she started at the bottom with me because of her hip dysplasia, and she was a little chunky and she needed to lose weight, and she did. So her and I were kind of like journey buddies. Yeah, it was
you
just
get it in it together, and it just was. I mean, honestly, she probably lived a lot longer because of everything that changed
oh,
with you,
I'd say so.
your
I'd
decision.
say so.
Probably honestly got more time together just because of all of that. So,
Yeah. She had cancer. We didn't know about that. What happened with her, because I've had people ask me this. She had cancer right where, and I didn't know about this until after we had put her down. We did a 2.5 mile walk the day that, before the day she died, 2.5 mile walk. We went to my brother's, which is about 30 minutes away, to do weightlifting. And I came back, and she was about 3 times, her abdomen was 3 times the size it should have been. And we took her to the emergency vet. And what happened is, her stomach had flipped. I know this happened in horses. I didn't know it happened in dogs. Her stomach flipped and it tore right where her esophagus met her stomach, and all of her stomach contents had spilled into her abdomen. And so it made her have a septic abdomen. Plus, it caused the stomach attaches to the pancreas, and all of that got twisted, and it caused acute pancreatitis. And then, oh, sorry, my husband was walking by. So she had acute pancreatitis from that. And then all of it, she just, they went in to try to save her. But what it turns out is she had a silver dollar size piece of cancer right where her gallbladder dumps into her intestines. And my sister's a vet, and so is her husband. And they said that was what they thought had caused her stomach to flip, is just the cancer. It was like the perfect storm. We were gone. The cancer had just grown enough to where it flipped the stomach, and then it was just all downhill from there. And anyways, yeah. So we decided to put her down because, there's no point in prolonging that.
absolutely. No, I'm so glad you had her for as long as you did and have learned so much from it. You didn't use, you could have gotten derailed and never came back, right? And so your longevity and your determination and your responsibility for the 9 months that led up to that helped that to be a short-term thing, and for you to get right back to what, that is what you have based your life on now. So it's just so important. How has the journey been to, like, has things like, have you had any cramping along the way? How has sleep been? How have those things gone?
Sorry.
No, of course. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I get so emotional talking about her still, because it's only been almost three months since she died, 2.5 months. Sleeping, I slept terrible before carnivore. Oh my gosh. I would literally not get out of bed till 9 or 10 sometimes in the morning, because I wouldn't be able to go to sleep till 5 in the morning.
Ugh.
Part of this was, despite my husband not being overweight, really, he snored like a friggin' freight train. Literally, you thought there was like an 800-pound man sleeping next to me. So he would sleep all night snoring, and I'd like stab him 8 times, stop snoring, stop snoring. And then he'd get up, and then I would finally go to sleep. So that was part of it. Plus, my blood sugars were sky high. I mean, my blood sugars were hitting like 200 and 300 some days, and I just slept terrible. He lost, funny enough, 27 pounds, my husband. He does not snore anymore unless he's exhausted. Like, if he's purely exhausted or sick, he'll snore a little bit.
Yep.
My sleeping it took me about 2 months for my sleeping to get better. I stopped having those like aspiration episodes. I can sleep on my back now. Actually, I prefer to sleep on my back now. I don't snore anymore unless I'm sick. The cramps and stuff. I mean, I had the whole carb withdrawal, right? I was literally eating cake one day. Like, that's my thing. I was eating cake one day and then carnivore the next. The withdrawals are pretty brutal. The brain fog, the cramping, the grumpiness, I had terrible diarrhea. Oh
Did
my
you
God.
know what was happening? Had you watched enough things, read enough things, so you kind of knew what was going on? And were
Oh
you,
yeah. Because I had done I'd done keto before and stuff. And I mean, I know about the carb withdrawals. Like I knew what was going on. The diarrhea was the worst though. Cause some
Oh,
people, my mom is a carb addict and she started when she came to visit us right after Rosie died, she started doing carnivore with me finally after 8 months.
nice.
And she had none of this. Like there's some people that do fine. I
Right.
was like, not. I told
Oh,
people, I was like, if you just experience it, it's like just beware. If you have to go to the bathroom, like just go. Do
yeah.
not wait.
Stay close to the restroom for a little while. How long did that last for you?
6 weeks. It was bad.
Mhm.
But before carnivore, I would oscillate between being severely constipated to having diarrhea. That was pre-carnivore. Like my GI tract was just upset all the time. All the time. I just constantly back and forth. I've had constipation a handful of times during carnivore, and I found for me, it's not having enough fat or water. It's one of the two. If I have enough fat and water, I'm fine.
You sound like Dr. Chiefy right now. That's always what I hear him say. It was 6 months for me. I had diarrhea for 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
And loose stools, but the thing that gets me in trouble now is if I have too much dairy, then I can just count on having constipation and whatever. But you said dairy's okay for you. Just a little
Yeah.
bit of dairy has not been a problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
I went out a whole month without doing any dairy just to because people are like, oh, it'll stall your weight, it'll do this, it'll do that. I'm like, well, maybe let's see, let's try it. And I found no change. But the amount of dairy I drink is I will have this is controversial, but I'll have a cup of coffee with a little bit of heavy cream in the morning. And then I will have bacon and eggs, no cheese, no nothing. And then dinner, if we have hamburgers, I'll have a slice of cheese. And that's about, and then I can go 3 days with just having a little bit of heavy cream in the morning and then no other cheese forms any other way. My
Yeah.
husband eats cheese like it's going out of style, but he lost his 27 pounds. And I told him if he loses any more, he turns sideways, he's going to go invisible. So for him, he doesn't have problems with diarrhea, constipation, or anything, or weight gain loss. So I was like, eat whatever cheese you want. It's fine.
I love it. My husband's very similar. He lost about 30 pounds, even 40. So he actually has a hard time eating enough. So sometimes he has to eat more burger patties, and he's just burger patties. He just eats burger patties and bacon all the time. And recently he's gotten into CrossFit, and this has been, so he's over a year carnivore now, and he's almost 60, and he's like popping muscles everywhere. I'm like he has
I'm
never looked like this. Never.
I'm actually really excited for Scott. So I'm 33. Scott is 16 and a half years older than me. So he's 50.
Yeah.
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 He's always had low testosterone, like
Oh,
for his entire life. He's
yeah.
been that like tall, really slender frame. His dad and his brother are not. They're like bulky dudes. We actually had his testosterone checked when he was, I think it was in 2017. So he was like 44-ish. And his testosterone was like 253 or 263. I can't remember exactly. Well, the whole like drive too for me losing weight is we want to have kids. Like I'm
Oh,
getting old for
oh,
having kids.
that's
I'm getting up
crazy.
there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I can't have kids morbidly obese. And I'm not going to have children that I ever put through. Not that I'm upset with my mom, but I'm never going to do that to my children. Like I've learned
Healthy
how
relationship.
important healthy eating is. Anyways, we had his testosterone checked just a few months ago. He has changed nothing but what he eats. His testosterone was 650, which is
Oh,
higher than most men his in his
of
age bracket. He's like
course.
a
For 50, yes.
yeah, because we thought he was going to have to take testosterone injections. And we've been hemming and hawing because I'm like, it's just really dangerous. There's side effects with
Yeah.
taking exogenous testosterone. And we're like, well, our PCP was like, let's just check it first. We checked it. I'm like, oh, that's better than my brother-in-law who's like 35. His testosterone's
Oh,
better. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So we've been working out and I'm like, I really want to see you get like stronger, get some muscles.
ooh, you're putting some extra demands on him. He's got the right
Yes.
food for it.
So I'm like, if I'm having to lose weight and try to, get in shape for like having kids, I was like, you need to do the same thing too. You may not need to lose any weight,
so
but you're going to
good.
get in shape too. He
Oh,
laughed.
have you noticed cycle hormonal? Has that healed for you? I mean, you've been on this a relatively short period of time, 10 months, but has that improved?
I have PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome. As I said, I have so many comorbidities. I actually forget half of them all the time. When I was 16, no, yeah. when I was 18, excuse me, I had my left ovary removed because I had a golf ball, or not golf ball, a orange size cyst that had engulfed it. And so they removed my left ovary. I have had the most abnormal cycles of my entire life. I could go 3 months and not have a period. I could go 2 weeks and then have another period. Like my periods would just constantly fluctuate. They were very heavy. I get very moody,
Mhm.
very emotional. As of probably 5 months ago, I have my periods, annoyingly enough, are spot on every single month. I've also noticed with every period that comes, it gets like it's not as bad. This is probably
Yes.
TMI, but I would
No,
have to
no,
use the
no,
largest size tampons and during the daytime and an overnight pad during the day because I would within an hour to an hour and a half, I would go through both. I
no.
was bleeding so heavily to now where I just can use like a second to the largest one and it lasts for 4-ish hours. I mean,
Wow.
it was so bad. I'd have to go every hour on the hour to change. My bleeding has cut down like probably by 2/3, if not maybe a little bit more. I'm spot on. I still have hard emotional cycles with my period. I've been like that my entire life, but it's
Mhm.
not as bad. It has improved immensely. Oh my God, it's improved.
Absolutely. And I think that those are like, that's what we learned from Mindy Pels. She's come on as guest speaker and we've learned about all these different periods and it's an emotional call to different things. And so different emotional paths are going to call you to go more inward. Like you might use your reading room a little bit more, like, don't talk to me, I'm hibernating, and that's okay. Like we can listen to it. And I love your perspective that, yes, meat heals, but it's also, it puts things into remission and it makes things improve. Like even if don't
Mhm.
expect this to be this magic wand or this magic pill that solves all your problems, but most people see a lot of improvement in a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
areas. So it is absolutely worth giving a shot.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask, oh yes, go.
I was gonna say, I think from the best way I can explain it to me for myself with carnivores is it's not a magic pill.
Yeah.
But what it did is it gave me the space to be able to look inward and self-assess versus just having that constant dark cloud hangover. It removed the cloud so I could see myself more clearly and do the internal work and external that I needed to do. Because if you just eat carnivore but don't work on the insides, you're just going to go back to, what led you to get there anyways.
The body follows, the mind leads. And
Hmm.
our a sense of self, our sense of reaction versus responding, our sense of blame versus responsibility. I agree 100%. If you're not doing that inner work, then you might end up back where you started. So that
Yeah.
is
Isn't it like 80? I think Dr. Sivas, because he's a bariatric surgeon, he said 85% of bariatric surgeries fail, like the life of them, because because I actually went through doing the lap band twice. I didn't get it done, but like I went through all the way up into scheduling
okay. Okay, me
from the
too, me too.
time I think I was 16, my dad was willing to pay out of pocket for it. Um, and then when I was like 25, I think when we lived in Arizona, I looked at that too. Anyways, and so that's what it is. It's like it'll give you the not being hungry, but unless you figure out why you're eating, they always end up failing. Like 85% is a pretty staggering number of failures for bariatric surgeries.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I do want to know what your like top 5 carnivore foods are. So tell me about that. And then I definitely want to give you a chance to just tell us all the activities that you have going on as well. But what are your top 5 carnivore picks?
Lately, it's actually flanken beef short ribs are my favorite.
Did you learn that
Favorite.
from Bella by chance?
No,
Okay, that's where
I
I'm addicted to those.
I just love Korean TV shows. That's actually I've for years and I don't know, I love Korean TV shows. And so because I mean that's usually their Korean style
Yes.
barbecue. That's how usually they are. So those are my favorite. I love skirt steak. We've just recently started cooking. So good. Of course, ribeye. Like ribeye is
Yeah, that's
great.
right.
My favorite like treat meal is chicken wings. We grill the chicken wings and I make my own buffalo sauce. Those are my probably for a not beef meal, my favorite. And then fifth one. Honestly, those are just my top four. We kind of cycle through those. I do like burgers, but I think that's well, okay. This is kind of it's carnivore, but it just depends if you're doing dairy, is actually homemade queso, because I love queso. Making homemade queso with the Carnivore crisp chicken breast chips, or you can do pork rinds. That would be probably like a side I would add to a meal, maybe. That would be my number 5
What
meal.
goes in your queso?
What I put in it. I've tried 1,000 different methods of doing it. It technically is more ketovore because I do put green chilies in it. There is I think it's Coastal is the brand. It's a white cheddar that I use for the base. And then I'll use pepper jack with habanero cheese too, and just kind of like rip it up, put it in there. Heavy cream, butter, um, green chilies, and if I'm feeling spicy, pickled jalapenos. I make it about once a month, give or take. The pickled jalapenos my husband doesn't like. He doesn't like super spicy. And then I think I put fresh garlic. I do sauteed garlic in there. And yeah, it's simple, delicious, yum.
What a treat. I can't believe when you're listing these foods, I'm just like, how lucky are we? This is our
Yeah.
diet, that our
Yeah.
lifestyle, we get to eat these decadent, incredible foods. And I love what you're doing too. I do that too. Dairy's a treat. So obviously, if I had queso every single day, probably would have some inflammation issues or some stalls or some diarrhea or something, or
Yeah.
but I think that, when you're bringing it in as an occasional treat, I'm kind of in the category with Kelly's treats, like the creme brulee and those are like, okay, like once a month-ish, and that is a good amount for me. I want to
Yeah.
hear where you are and what you're doing. I know you have a book club. Are you doing coaching groups? I know you have a vibrant YouTube. What's all happening in your world?
So right now we're doing mostly the YouTube. I have a locals channel that I just share some extra stuff. If you love dogs, I share my dogs all the time because I love doggos. I have a Discord that we set up. We do monthly meetups because I live in Bellingham, Washington. And so if anybody's, interested, you can always just go to my website, which is CarnivorousMe.com, and sign up. We do those every single month. They involve a hike, walk, plus we actually are going to be, my husband is going to be grilling out flank and ribs, and I believe some beef sausages for whoever wants to come. And yeah, that's kind of like what we're doing right now. I've thought about doing the coaching thing. I am not quite sure how I feel about that necessarily for me. I don't know. We'll figure it out down the road. What I am working on behind the scenes is to share with the locals community is kind of, I call them modules, things that I've done throughout my journey that have helped each week work on looking inside myself, not like a how to, but more like things like journaling. I'm not a journaler. I actually hate writing, but just like these small little tasks that I've used throughout, keeping a non-scale victory journal, these kinds of things to share with others. That's like the big thing that I'm working on right now, is just kind of trying to get that set up to share with people.
Anything that builds consistency and that builds the mindset, and because this is a whole person journey, it's a whole health journey. It's not just about the food. So I love that you care enough about other people and translating your success and their success, that you're putting these resources together. So it's been wonderful. You have been such a pleasure. I just knew that you would be, and it's been incredible connecting with you and hearing your story. And I hope we can do a continuation interview down the road. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.